Good evening, class. I hope you're having a blessed day today. Today, we are going to continue what we did last week. We are in our advanced curriculum. It's topic number 4. It's the last half of the Song of Solomon. Like we did last week, we played a recap video of the very first time we taught the advanced curriculum because we taught the chapters in the Song of Solomon in such extensive detail. I just believe it's better to allow you to listen to that teaching instead of reteaching it again because we taught it with such power. So I encourage you to enjoy the lesson. We're going to be playing the last 4 chapters, 5, 6, 7, and 8 from our advanced curriculum in 2022. 2023, the beginning of 2023. I pray you enjoy it. I pray it blesses you. If you have questions, send your questions in. Please get the additional resources, which will be on the website. Church, I love you. God bless you, and we will see you next week.
Good evening, class. Welcome to our advanced curriculum. We are in topic number 4. Wow, we are a third of the way through when this week is finished. So we're getting pretty good. We're getting pretty far. And this is going to be topic the Song of Solomon, chapters 5 to 8. If you remember last week, we went through Song of Solomon, chapter 1 to chapter 4. This week, we're going to go Song of Solomon, chapter 5 to chapter 8. So we're actually going to finish the Song of Solomon today. And we've split it up into 2 halves. But before I get into an overview and talk about the Song of Solomon and then we get into the lesson, I want to pray. So Father, I thank you. Pray you bless everybody under the sound of my voice. Let this word become wisdom, revelation, and the knowledge of your Son. Spiritual seed sown, producing in our body, mind, will, and emotion, transforming us by the renewing of our mind, conforming us to the image of Christ, growing us up in the measure and the stature of the fullness of Christ. God, we love you. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, let me remind you of this before we get into the curriculum. Anything that's colored in blue is the Holy Spirit. Orange will either be the daughters of Jerusalem or it will be the watchmen. And then red is the bridegroom and black is the bride. So just remember your color coding when going through the Song of Solomon so you know which speaker is which. And we'll talk about that as we go. And just know that next week we're going to be dealing with what we call the Song of Solomon progressions. There are many different progressions inside of the Song of Solomon. Because if you remember, the Song of Solomon is an 8-chapter love song depicting married love. And there's 2 ways to interpret the Song of Solomon. The Song of Solomon could be interpreted in the natural interpretation, which is Solomon, King Solomon, and the Shulamite, who becomes his bride. You could have that interpretation. It's a depiction of married love between a husband and a wife. Or you could interpret the Song of Solomon in the spiritual interpretation. Paul said in Ephesians 5, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. And when we understand the Song of Solomon in that understanding, the spiritual interpretation, he is the bridegroom, we are the bride. Now, the Song of Solomon was written before the book of Hosea. But the book of Hosea in chapter 2, it explicitly says, I will betroth thee. Where God explicitly says, actually, I'll flip there and read it to you. In Hosea chapter 2, he says, I will betroth thee unto me forever. Yea, I will betroth thee unto me in righteousness and in judgment and loving kindness and in mercies. I will even betroth thee unto me in faithfulness, and thou shalt know the Lord. So Hosea writes after Solomon, but he is the first prophet to explicitly say the betrothal or the engagement marriage between God and his people, or between Jesus, the bridegroom, and we, the church, his bride. Now, to understand a betrothal, I'll just say this real fast so it makes sense. A betrothal does not mean the marriage is consummated yet. It just means it's kind of like an engagement, except you have all of the benefits of a marriage and all of the commitment is there. So it's like being married, you just haven't consummated the marriage. And the reason why I say that is you are betrothed unto God right now. Even though you have not had the marriage supper of the Lamb and received your resurrected body, you're not living in the kingdom of God, like in the kingdom of heaven you're still in the world technically. Your physical body is. Your spirit's of heaven. But the reason why I say that, it's not over yet. So many people, when they talk about the gospel, they talk about Jesus died. But the gospel is Jesus died and he's coming again. The coming again is him taking you into the marriage supper to consummate the marriage, to take you into the fullness of God and take you out of this world. And there's a couple things I want to talk about before we get into the Song of Solomon. One, I know I'm pretty sure I mentioned this last week. If not, I'm going to say it this week for sure. We need to disregard any underlying sexual tones when understanding the Song of Solomon. This is for them that are pure, all things are pure. So when we read through the Song of Solomon, we read it through a lens of purity. We're not talking about there should be no sexual undertones when understanding the Song of Solomon. You obviously never see us speak of anything like that, but I just want to make sure when you read it, that's not something that comes up. I saw a video online of somebody, was reading through the Song of Solomon, and they were pulling out these points. They're making a video just to, get followers or whatever. But the two things that stood out to me the most was the caption that says, "I don't understand what it means," but they were quoting it, and I think that's a terrible thing to happen, for you to read through this and not understand the gold mine that is the Song of Solomon, the understanding of the bridegroom revelation. This right here will change your life if you understand Song of Solomon. It really will. And then the other part of that is the sexual undertones that were used in that little video, about, oh, it's so spicy. It's like, this is a depiction of married love, and married love is pure and holy and righteous before God. There is love, but there should be no sexual undertones of lust as the world uses them. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. You should never interpret the Bible or read through that lens. Also, I do want to say this again. When interpreting the Song of Solomon, you want to make sure that all of the interpretation has a New Testament biblical principle attached to it. You don't want to be reading through the Song of Solomon and pulling out interpretations dealing with the Song of Solomon that you cannot back with New Testament principles. So if you're saying, well, it means this, but you don't have any New Testament to back it up, then I would not recommend that interpretation of the Song of Solomon. Okay, so that should be all the basics. I know it's a lot to have to reiterate this week after week, but I assure you that without a true understanding and without taking the time to really tell you, hey, it's pure, it's holy, it's righteous, and you need to understand this according to that lens, is the only way you can really receive everything that the Song of Solomon has for you. I have spent a lot of time in the Song of Solomon, especially in the past year. I probably have 20 hours, 30 hours worth of teaching on the Song of Solomon on our website right now. Obviously, this is our second week dealing with it in this class, and we're going to keep talking about it. But the Song of Solomon is just so powerful, because the Song of Solomon is an 8-chapter love song, which you can understand the progression of maturity through the Song of Solomon. If you could ever understand what this song is all about, it's the progression of maturity in a believer's life. And as we speak about last week, the first 4 chapters of the Song of Solomon is the bride's inheritance in the bridegroom. It's what Jesus gives to you. It's what you receive. The first 4 chapters is about your reception. The last 4 chapters of the Song of Solomon is the bridegroom's inheritance in the bride. It's what Jesus receives from us. And we're going to see this as we go through the song, where you see an immediate shift between chapter 4 and chapter 5, where it quits being about us and starts being about him. And this is one of the greatest things you can ever get to, is a place where you live in the last 4 chapters of the Song of Solomon. Really, the last chapter of the Song of Solomon particularly. But the point is, it quits being about you and about what God can do for you, about what you receive from Jesus, and about what you turn around and can do for him, or what he receives in your life. The life you live is about what you can give to him at the last day, not about what he gives you. and that's maturity. Maturity is no longer having a focus on yourself and what you need to receive. Now, I'm not saying there's not times in a believer's life where you have to receive, especially early on. You need to receive all of the love of God. You need to understand it. You need to receive it from God. It's only through that you will be able to overflow it back to God. So you have to receive before you can give. So there is a time for this, but you never want to get stuck in the first 4 chapters. You want to always progressively move forward. I use the Song of Solomon in my personal life as a way to evaluate where I am. And there's different seasons in life. There's different times and places in life that, you might be in a specific season dealing with something, and you might be in chapter 5 or you might be in chapter 8. I mean, you want to always progressively be going forward, and you want to get to a place of full maturity with the Lord. But you can evaluate it based on this. You can see, in my chapter 2:17, where the Lord has called me to do something, but I'm immature, and the Lord is going, but I'm not going. We can evaluate our lives based on these things. So before we jump into chapter 5 to chapter 8, I want to do an overview of what we've learned in the Song of Solomon in the first 4 chapters. In the first chapter, we learn really, this is going to be a really brief overview. If you were not in class last week, you need to go watch it. We did over 2 hours on this, so this 2-minute overview is not going to do this justice. But I just want you to just kind of get an idea and a refresher for those that were in class. Chapter 1 is, where do you receive from God? Chapter 2 is the call out, where he calls you out. At the end of chapter 2 is the immaturity and when you draw back. Chapter 3 is the going to find. When you understand that your drawing back, even in immaturity, causes separation with the Lord, that's when you turn to sin. Then it causes separation. Then you turn around and you go after him, and he always meets you where you're at. If you repent, God is always in the plan to restore and reconcile you. That's a fundamental truth out of the book of Hosea, that if you've never watched our daily teachings, you should watch Hosea. And then chapter 4 is all about his affirmations to her, what he says about her. Because the most powerful part of chapter 4 is what happens in chapter 4 causes her to make the statement, I will go until the daybreak and the shadows flee away. I will get me to the mountain of myrrh and the hill of frankincense. In chapter 2, he calls her to the mountain. And in chapter 2, verse 17, she draws back. Chapter 3, she takes a step, but she goes to the city. She doesn't go to the mountain, but she goes to the city. He meets her where she's at in the city. And then because of the affirmations he pours out in chapter 4, it causes her response to say, I will go. I've made a decision in my heart to go all the way. Because of that, he says, you ravished my heart. It's a deep overflow of emotion for a people that make a choice. She hasn't gone yet. She's only made the choice to go. She's dedicated her heart to God to go. It's a powerful truth on understanding that God does not judge according to the outward. She's not there yet, but he judges according to the inward, her heart position to go after him. And that's one of the most fundamental truths you should know out of the Bible, that a person that is willing, somebody that wants to go, somebody that has made a choice in their heart to go, even in the midst of figuring it out and not being there yet, just because you have not gotten to a place of full maturity does not mean that God is not ravished in his heart for you. His heart is ravished for a people that make the choice. She still has 4 chapters to go before she's in a place of full maturity. But even in the midst of that, she has made a decision and it ravished his heart. Now, I need to read these last verses because this will lead us into chapter 5. So let's read verse 12. A garden encloses my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up and a fountain sealed. Thy plants are as an orchard of pomegranate with pleasant fruits, camphire with spikenard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, with all the chief spices. A fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. So he talks about her garden. And then her response is to call forth the wind. Awake, O north wind, come thou south. And she's calling him, let my beloved come into the garden. Now that cry of let my beloved come into the garden is what leads into chapter 5 of the Song of Solomon. And we're going to pick up right here in Song of Solomon 5:1 today. And we're going to talk about the bridegroom's inheritance in the bride. We're going to talk about Jesus's, what he receives from us today. So we're going to get right into this. And let's get started today. We are on page 26 of your curriculum. Topic number 4, Song of Solomon 5-8. Let's get started. I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. So let's talk about this for a minute. We see Jesus answering the prayer to be enjoined with her. So in chapter 4, she cries out, calling her beloved into the garden. And his response is, I am coming to my garden. Now, one thing I want you to see is that 9 times, my garden, my sister, my spouse, my myrrh, my spice, my honeycomb, my honey, my wine, my milk. 9 times does he use the word my. And that's important because that's the declarative statement of taking possession. That he is taking possession of her, declaring what is his. This is where you see this dramatic shift in the Song of Solomon, where it no longer becomes about her inheritance, but it's his inheritance in her. That he receives us. He says, you are my inheritance. My. Just over and over using the word my. That declarative statement of you are mine. You are my inheritance. And that's powerful because at the end of chapter 4, she calls forth him to receive. That what he said about her, the affirmations he said in chapter 4, causes her to make the shift for come and receive me. Come and receive what I have for you. It's no longer about me. It's about what you receive from me. And this is a powerful shift in the Song of Solomon. Now, Jesus is gathering the sacrificed, that's the laid down, bride with spice, fragrance of affection and adoration by the way we live. This is what Jesus is gathering. Jesus said, I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. The myrrh is remember, myrrh is referred to as the sacrificial burial offering. You know, it's used in sacrificial burial offerings. Myrrh is an expensive fragrance it's an expensive spice with immense fragrance, but it's used in burial. So he said, I gathered my myrrh with my spice. He's talking about the sacrifice, the way we are laid down, the way we give ourselves over to him. And that's important because we talk about, I think in 2 weeks, a laid down lovesick bride. That's the big revelation that accompanies this entire curriculum, is the understanding of a laid down lovesick bride. And the minute you make the shift to it being about him, you now live sacrificially. And that sacrificial living is where we get the laid down part of laid down lovesick bride. And we're going to go over that in a couple weeks, but I just want to point that out now. Now the spice is talking about the fragrance of affection and adoration by the way we live. That he's receiving our life, the sacrificial way we live, and the spice or the fragrance of how we have affection to him, how we have adoration to him, how we live our life for him. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. Now the honey and the honeycombs are signs of wealth, so that's important, and sweetness and satisfaction, which he has in us. What he has received of us, like the wealth and sweetness and satisfaction. That's talking about the honey and the honeycomb. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Now, wine is for celebrations, and milk is for strength. You got to think about this is what he's receiving of us. He's receiving our lives, which are a depiction of strength and satisfaction, and it's a celebration. Jesus calling the beloved into a place to enjoy with him because we are his inheritance. When he says, eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. This is his call for us to be enjoined and to enjoy it with him. This is powerful because the life we live is a sacrifice unto God. It's a sacrifice to Jesus. And the way we live, he receives that. And it is satisfaction to him. But it's not just that we live and he receives. It's we live, he receives, and he wants us to partake of the celebration of it. That the way we live is so satisfying to him that he wants us to partake in the celebration and the feast of it. You know, that's the marriage supper of the Lamb. The marriage supper of the Lamb is the marriage supper. It's what we have as we are enjoying with the Lord forever at that point. It's the marriage. It's the celebration. But it's not just that he receives the celebration. He is receiving us. He's receiving his bride, his people, but he wants it to be a celebration with him. That we all partake at the same time of the good and pleasantness and the satisfaction of being enjoined to the Lord. That when our focus shifts from us to him, it's all about what he receives. And in what he receives, we partake of. That's powerful. I sleep, but my heart waketh. It is the voice of my beloved that knocketh, saying, open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled, for my head is filled with dew, and my locks with the drops of the night. Now, this is one of those parts where you see the black reference code. That means this is the bride speaking, but she's quoting, the red part is Jesus. She's quoting Jesus. This is what he said to me. So I sleep shows her in rest after praying for the wind to come in the garden in chapter 2. So that's supposed to say chapter 4. Make that correction. I'll make that correction in the answers. But this is, so she prayed for the wind to come. Awake, O north wind, blow, south wind. So she prayed for that, and then she immediately went into a state of rest. And this is something that doesn't happen a lot with believers, especially believers that aren't mature yet. This is a mature believer, or the start of a mature believer. That when you pray and call for it, like when you beckon the Lord to come in and receive what you're doing for the Lord and things, that prayer is then followed by rest. The way we are not anxious, the way we're not worried, the way we can rest in knowing that the Lord hears us and answers us. This is powerful. But I just want to take a second to really let you meditate that she sleeps. The bride sleeps. If you pray and then you stay up all night worrying, you don't believe that your prayer got heard or your prayer got answered. You got to be able to rest knowing that the Lord takes care of you. Let's keep going. But her heart wakes. It is the voice of my beloved knocking. So her heart wakes. Now she hears the voice. Now notice throughout the song, she hears and knows that it is Jesus. And that's something powerful that I almost forgot. I wrote that in the curriculum. That you need to take a moment and just remember this point right here. That when it is the voice of my beloved. I did this in our daily teaching, number 166 or 167 in our daily teaching, was the fact that she hears him. And that daily teaching, 166 or 167, whichever one it is, it's part 13 or 14. I talked about it using Elijah in 1 Kings 17, that you hear God. It's not a matter of you hearing, it's a matter of you obeying. And one thing you see consistent through the Song of Solomon, even from an immature believer to a full mature believer, is she knows his voice. Jesus in John 10, says that you hear the voice of the good shepherd. You know his voice, a stranger you will not follow. So I want you to see this again, that she knows it's him in the same way you know it's him. Even in a place that you're not, even, it's not only the mature believers, the pastors and the great apostles and the great evangelists, they hear God, but we don't know. Even in a place of growing in maturity, you hear God. She heard him through the whole song, and she knew it was him. He is knocking and asking her to come into the place where his head is dew and his hair wet. Now, open to me, my sister, my sister. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my undefiled, for my head is filled with dew and my locks with the drops of the night. Now we hear him beckoning her to come forth. And he's calling her into the place where his head is dew and his hair is wet. Now this is a representation of the Garden of Gethsemane. This is the place in which Jesus sacrificed his will. Before Jesus went to the cross, and before Jesus went to the whipping post, and he went through everything he did, paying for our sin and being the Lamb of God and being the sacrifice of God, the thing Jesus had to do was say, not my will. Jesus said, not my will, but your will be done. So when he beckons her into the place where his head is filled with dew and his hair is wet, he's calling her into the same place that he was at in the Garden of Gethsemane, where you must surrender your will, where you must surrender to God, where everything about your life must stop to be about the will of God. That no matter what comes next, and you got to understand, what's about to happen is she's about to go through a definite time of testing and trying. I mean, she's about to go through a part in the Song of Solomon that is not going to be easy. But before she can enter into this, she must make a decision. Yes, she is prayed. She's called forth the north wind and the south. She's beckoned it on. She's beckoned the wind. The time of testing is coming. You know, she wants her garden to be proved. She wants him to receive of the garden. And when that happens, before it happens, what he calls her into is a place of surrendering the will. That no matter what happens next, you will walk out your purpose ordained of God, no matter what comes next, no matter how hard it gets. You must make a decision beforehand. Anybody that's wanting to walk out their purpose, this is something I would highly recommend you take just a moment and pray about, more than a moment. This is something that you should not do on a whim. This is something that takes meditation and prayer and study of the word. This is something that needs to be intentional. Because when you surrender your will and you say, God, I will go, God expects you to go. When God says he's going to do something, his word doesn't come back void. He will do it. So when you tell God you will, you need to evaluate it. You know, evaluate the cost. That's why the Bible says count the cost. You got to count the cost. You know, before you step into it, make sure you know what it's going to cost. But that's why Jesus beckons her into the garden. And the other part about the garden, not only is it the place where Jesus surrenders his will, it's where he receives the strength of God to go through the time of testing. What she's about to go through in the time of testing is only accomplished by entering in to the Garden of Gethsemane reality that Jesus partook of before he went to the cross. That the way in which we overcome the things that are about to happen in chapter 5 is through the reception of what happened in chapter 4 and at the beginning of chapter 5. So what she receives of him is the only way to overcome what's about to happen in chapter 5. And I know we're not there yet. If you've done your homework and read through it, you know what's coming. One of my favorite verses in the whole Bible is about to come up in chapter 5. So let's keep going. Now, sister refers to the likeness in human life. He says, my sister. Love shows the adoration of him towards her. That should be her. So we have the human aspect, the adoration of love. Dove shows the single-mindedness and loyalty, and undefiled represents her unfailing commitment to obey. These are the descriptions. When he says, open to me, open your heart, open your life, open yourself to me, because we're of the same, this human aspect, we're in the same human likeness. I'm just like you. I've been through it. He goes, I've overcome it. You can overcome it. If you'll be like me, you'll come with me. You need to know how much love and adoration I have for you and affection that I want you to be with me and do this with me. I see the fact that you're single-minded, you're loyal, you want to do this with me. And I see that you're undefiled, that you're unfailing to waver in your commitment to me. So he gives her these points of affection. I'm trying to think of a good word for that. But what he says about her right here is what's going to cause the next response. It's not just the stuff he said in chapter 4, but it's what he sees about her that will cause her to open and to actually come into the place where his head is filled with dew and his locks are wet. To go into this Garden of Gethsemane reality, she must understand that Jesus walked it out. Or let's say it better. The only way we will enter into the Garden of Gethsemane reality is to understand that he's done it already. He's been through it. He overcame it. He's just like us, and he loves us. He wants us. He has deep desire for partnership with us. He sees the fact that we're single-minded to us. He knows that we're unwilling to compromise in our commitment. We're unfailing in it. We will go all the way. And that's powerful. I tell people all the time, any lack of obedience in our life, any lack of anything in our life is a lack of the revelation of God's deep desire for you. And when you see how much he desires partnership and what he sees about you, you must understand we're still in chapter 5. We got to go all the way to chapter 8 before we're at full maturity. Now, chapter 5, we're about halfway there. You know, we're pretty mature at this point, but we're not there yet. And this is what he sees about her. I want you to know you don't have to be in a place of absolute maturity with the Lord for the Lord to see you as a dove undefiled. That's powerful. What God sees about you and what he calls out of you are what we call budding virtues, the things that are not yet all the way manifest. Listen, she still has to walk this out. We still have to get to the end of chapter 5. She still has to walk this out, but it's what he sees about her right now in the process. I have put off my coat. How shall I put it on? I have washed my feet. How shall I defile them? Now, her unyielding commitment to Jesus is here. This is where you see it. I have taken off the filthy rags. I have taken off my coat. That's talking about the filthy rags, the old man. Why should I put them on again? He's calling me out. Why should I put back on the filthy rags, the things that I've already taken off? It says, I have washed my feet. How shall I defile them? My feet are washed. This is also a representation of when Jesus washes his disciples' feet before the cross. How should I go back to compromise or filth? And this is powerful because when he calls her out, the immediate response is, yes, I'm unyielding in my commitment. Like I've already put off the old man, the filth, the filthy rags and the old nature, the compromising and filth. I've already put that off. I've already been washed clean. How should I go back to that? My beloved put his hand by the hole of the door, and my bowels were moved for him. I love this. His hand is also translated power. His hand is translated power. And by the hole is also cave, socket, or cavity. Jesus putting his power in her to follow. And her bowels were moved, or they cried out with a loud noise. That's Pentecost. That's a representation of Pentecost. So what I want you to see is that the beloved, Jesus, takes his power into the cavity into the open spot of you and fills it. And that causes the bowels or the inward parts to move. That when Jesus puts his power inside of you, it cries, the groanings. You hear how your stomach groans when you're hungry. The same way when the power of God comes and fills the captivity, the cavity, the open part of your heart, and you cry out. That's the same thing at Pentecost. The disciples had a void and a wind came, a rushing mighty wind. And wind is air that fills an empty space, a void, and it causes the sound of a wind. A wind is when something fills emptiness. The same way Jesus' hands or his power is filling the cavity, the openness of her, and that's what causes her to cry out. This is where we know that we need the power of God to walk this life out. I'm starting to speed up because this is definitely going to be a long day, a long class today, because I don't want to go through this so fast. This is some of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible right here, so I'm taking my time. I'm going to pick up a little bit. We're going to have to start going just a little bit faster, but we're not going to go too fast to where we miss any of this. I rose up to open to my beloved, and his hands dropped with myrrh, and my fingers with sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. Now her immediate obedience. I want you to know when the power of God hit her, she immediately went into obedience. The same way when the power of God hit Paul, or Saul technically, before he became Paul, it says he immediately went into the synagogue and started preaching. That when God touches you, it causes immediate obedience. Hand represents power, and the fingers are the grasping mechanism. So your hand represents the power. My hands are dropping with myrrh. It's this sacrificial living. But it's the grasping that comes from the fingers, sweet-smelling myrrh upon the handles of the lock. In both her will, power, and ability, the way she actually does it, she has surrendered the myrrh to God. The lock represents her opening her inwardmost parts to him. So immediately when the power of God hits her, she's called forth, she's decided to go, the power of God is on her, and then both in her willpower and in her ability. It's not just that she will, it's actually the acting out of the will. Faith without works is dead. So it's not just she believes, as she's believed and acting on belief. And in that place, it's both her willpower and her ability. It's dropping his myrrh with sweet-smelling myrrh. It's not only that my will is sacrificed to God, but in my ability, it's sweet-smelling myrrh. And all of my life, I live sacrificially unto God. And the lock, like I said, upon the handles of the lock, and both her will, power, and her ability, the surrendered to God, opens up the inward parts of her heart. That when the power of God touches you and the understanding of God's deep desire for you, you'll surrender everything, your will, your ability, your desires, and you'll open up the most inward parts of your heart to God. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave no answer. So we see her having an interesting event, or even. She goes, but she does not find. She seeks and calls out to him with no answer. She is finally getting to a place of maturity in God, and ask for the purpose, call her to come, and she will meet him. Now, this is something that needs to be talked about for just a second, and this happens in the life of a believer when you're walking out purpose, and you need to understand what's going on. He called her to the mountain. She went to the city. She agreed in her heart to go to the mountain. It ravaged his heart. And then her life, with the power of God coming on her, is going to cause her to go to the mountain. It's going to cause her to go all the way. It's not just that she willed it, it's that she now has the ability. She said in her heart she'd go, but her feet need to start moving to the mountain. And you're going to see that in just a second. So when he calls her out, when the power of God comes on her and he's beckoning her to come, she goes into a season where she doesn't necessarily feel his presence. And this happens a lot. Now, the reason why this is happening is because she hasn't got to the mountain. Remember, she drew back in immaturity in chapter 2. So she's not where God told her to be in this moment. So this is still not a place of full maturity because she's not there yet. And that's part of the reason why. As remember in chapter 3, she had this distance is what she felt from the Lord because she had not gone like she was told to. God is always where he told you to be. God is always with you. He never leaves you nor forsake you. So I want you to know that. It's not that he left her. It's that she can't necessarily discern the presence of God because she's not where she's supposed to be yet. Now she's on the way. She surrendered her will and her ability now. She is going to go, but she's not where she's supposed to be. Now, this is also important because number 2, you go through seasons in life where sometimes you don't necessarily feel God, but you have to walk it out by faith. And this is something that I can testify to personally that I went through in my own life with the Lord, is that when you go and you start walking out your call and your purpose, when we started this church and we started going, there were seasons, I don't want to, maybe not seasons, maybe just season, maybe not plural, but there was times when you couldn't discern the presence of God. I just had to keep going forward even if I couldn't feel him. Like I knew what I was supposed to be doing, so I just had to keep living that life even if I couldn't discern the presence of God. And this is where you see maturity really come out. That if God's will stands true and God's word never comes back void and you agree to go all the way, that you go all the way despite the circumstances, despite if you feel them or not. Now the watchmen went about the city, found me, they smote me, they wounded me. The keepers of the wall took away my veil from me. Now the watchmen are the spiritual leaders, and they persecute her for her genuine relationship with the bridegroom. Her veil is her position in the body, and this is talking about rejection in the church. There is going to come a time where you stand for truth and you know what God has called you to do. Remember, he beckoned her out and she's making the move. And in making the move, she can't discern the presence of the Lord. She's just got to do it by faith. And in this process, the spiritual leadership is rejected her. They're starting to talk negative about her. They are persecuting her to the point that they take away her position out of the body of Christ. And if you are going to walk with God, this is, I hate to say this because I don't like when this happens, but persecution is going to come. You need to know that this is something that's going to happen. This ministry, it's not going to happen in my ministry. I'm never going to persecute you for walking out with God. But people that don't walk truly with God, or people that are walking something that they're not necessarily called to do, they're going to persecute you for your genuine relationship with the Lord. Because you don't have to do anything for your life. The devil will use condemnation in their life when they look at how pure your relationship is with the Lord. How genuine you are about following the Lord, even if you don't feel him. That will cause the devil to attack the other person. It's not going to be you that's doing anything, but they will persecute you for that. And they'll even take away your position out of the church for it. I know many pastors, I have some personal testimony about this. I know many pastors that this happened to, that they were kicked out of the church because of their relationship with the Lord. Certain people that received the baptism of the Holy Ghost and started walking out their call and actually having this deep desire were kicked out of the Baptist church because the Baptist church don't believe in it. Now, it's true, it's in the Bible, and it was setting people free because people were getting healed, but they rejected that. So maybe you go into this season, and this season is probably one of the most difficult for most believers, is when you go into a season where you start getting rejected by the church. Maybe they kick you out of the church. And then my favorite favorite verse in the Bible, or one of them. I guess you can have many. This is definitely one of my favorite, if not my favorite. She says, I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, that you tell him that I am sick of love. Now, even in the midst of this persecution, and not being able to feel the manifest presence of the Lord, she does not get offended, and she charges other believers to help her. Now, you got to remember the daughters of Jerusalem are the immature believers in the story. The bride's growing in maturity. The daughters of Jerusalem are less mature believers. It's not saying they're completely immature. It's just saying they're less mature. So she calls out, she charges, she tells the daughters of Jerusalem to help her find the beloved. And if you find him, you tell him that I'm sick of love. I'm love sick. I'm not offended. The watchmen, they persecuted her. They kicked her out of the church. They took her position. She says, I'm not offended. I'm not offended. I love him. I'm love sick for him. We know that sick of love or love sick means to be pained by anything that hinders or gets in the way of love. It's having affection or adoration to the degree that it makes you grieve to be without it. That's Mike Bickle and my definition, back to back. That's this. She's in this place where she's so emphatically in love with the Lord that even the persecution of the church does not cause her to be offended. I'm not going to draw back in offense. And then we hear this statement. What is thy beloved more than another beloved, O thou fairest among women? What is thy beloved more than another beloved, that thou so dost charge us? And there's two questions here. Who is this man that is more beautiful than another? And why do you charge us to help? That's the two questions. What do you know about this man that we don't know? And why are you charging us to help you? Spiritual immature believers will never understand the deep love for God, even when rejected by the church. But they never draw back from the bride. This is something I want you to take note of. That when your life, when you walk with God and for God, and you don't back off of this truth, and you go after him no matter what comes against you from the church, the immature believers will follow. The people that really want God will look at your life and be like, I don't understand how you're not offended. How are you not upset with God because you can't feel him and they're kicking you out of the church because of it? But you still love him. What do you know? What is this beloved more than all the other beloveds? Out of everything else in this world that could be a beloved to you, work, career, substance, family, your wife, your kids. I mean, all the other things that could be the beloved to you. But this man right here is the one that you're going after, even if it costs you everything. Even in the midst of great persecution, you're not willing to waver in it. What do you know about him that we don't know? That lifestyle will cause the immature believers that really want to grow to follow you. I see this all the time in this ministry right here, in my ministry, in Blank Slate Ministries, that there's a lot of believers that come to us that are in different places of maturity. Some of them are very immature. Some of them are growing in maturity. Some of them are pretty mature believers, but they're still struggling with certain areas. I mean, we have the entire spectrum, all the way from, early 20s and younger to 70s and 80s. I mean, we have everybody follow this ministry. And in all different walks of life. But this right here has got to be one of the number one principles. That in the face of great persecution, I don't draw back. And I don't care. I don't let it hinder because I'm lovesick. I'm not offended. And this causes immature believers or people that are less mature than us to follow us because they want to know, what do we know? Why do I not draw back in offense when the church persecutes me? They want to know. And the next verses we're going to talk about. So this page and the rest of this page and the next page is going to go through one of the deepest gold mines of the revelation of the bridegroom. Now, these next couple verses are a part of our marriage curriculum. It's also part of our end times curriculum because I believe there's two main places in the Bible, Song of Solomon chapter 5 verses 10 through 16 and Revelation chapter 1. You could technically use 2 and 3 too. But these clear descriptions of Jesus, when you see him this way, is what causes you not to be offended. This is what causes you not to draw back in offense in the face of great persecution. And the trials and the testing of your life, this is how you overcome, is getting a deeper revelation on this chapter of the Bible. You can use either one. I mean, chapter 5 and chapter 1 of Revelation, chapter 5 of Song of Solomon, chapter 1 of Revelation are just gold mines. You really want to spend a lot of time in these, studying these and understanding these. We're going to go through these descriptions kind of quick. We're going pretty long today, but let's get through these, and then we'll take a break for a minute. We'll go into chapter 6 when we return. So my beloved is white and ruddy, the chiefest among 10,000. Now white is dazzling or radiant, especially as to blind the eyes temporarily. He's so beautiful, it's almost blinding how radiant and beautiful he is. Now ruddy or red represents the human aspect. David was, what they said about David, Solomon's father, is that David was ruddy. He had this red complexion. And so when they call Solomon ruddy, because remember, this in the natural interpretation, this is a Shulamite to Solomon. So she calls Solomon ruddy or red. So in the spiritual interpretation, that means that's showing the human aspect of Jesus. Now, he is the chiefest among 10,000. Now, the chiefest, or the banner of victory over, there's none like him. Now, if you know anything about banners when it comes to wars and armies, is that the banner is always coming back from a place of victory. You have the banner over when you're coming from victory. You don't take the banner to war, you bring the banner back from victory in war. So you're coming back from war and it's in victory. So this is showing that he is the banner. He is the declared victory over our life. His head is as the most fine gold. His locks are bushy and black as a raven. Now his head, or his representation of his leadership, is as most fine gold. And gold is always a representation of divinity. So his leadership is divine. It's precious. It's pure and it's of God. We can trust his leadership. His head is as gold. Now his hair is bushy and black as a raven. Now the locks or hair being bushy is referring to the vitality of his hair, referring also to the submission or the Nazarite vow to God. Jesus was a Nazarite. That the submission, or that the Nazarite vow is you don't cut your hair. It's an offering of submission to God. So it's black. It's black, also representation of the youthfulness of the color. It's black as a raven, and a raven, if you don't know, is solid black. Every part of a raven is black. Beak, eyes, feathers, claws, everything about a raven is black. There is nothing that is lacking in his life. And that's important because when you come to God, you don't have to worry that he's tired or that he's old and it's going to take time. No, he has the vitality. It's his youthfulness of his nature because his hair his locks are bushy and black as a raven. His eyes are as the eyes of doves by the rivers of water, washed with milk and fitly set. This is what he said about her, and it's what she says about him. That his eyes are like doves. They're single-minded in the purity of a dove. His eyes are for me. Now, milk is a representation of strength, and fitly set, or fullness remaining in what he sees. It's the heavenly perspective. So when it says washed with milk and fitly set, is talking about the strength in which his eyes, or his single-mindedness to us is, the strength of the relationship. But when it says fitly set, that also refers to the fullness remaining. It's talking about the fact of what he sees in us. He's looking at the heavenly perspective of the relationship. He looks at the relationship through the perspective of eternity. His cheeks are as a bed of spices, as sweet flowers. His lips like lilies, dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. Now, his cheeks, or his countenance, or his emotions are fragrant. They're pleasureful. His cheeks, you can see the emotion in the cheeks. As the cheeks move, you can see emotion in it. And his emotion is fragrant. It's pleasureful. He's never upset. His lips like lilies. Now, his lips are always a representation of his words. Now, the lips represent the word. The mouth represents intimacy. Two different things. So the lips or his words are like lilies. Now, when he speaks, they're always pure. The lilies are always a representation of purity in the Song of Solomon. But it's dropping sweet-smelling myrrh, which means he's always calling us to sacrificial living or dying to self to live to God. So everything he speaks to us is pure and holy and righteous, but it's calling us to sacrificial living. His hands are as gold rings set with a beryl. His belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. Now his hands are what he does, his works are divinely inspired. And the beryl represents his subjection to God. Now the beryl is also used to define it's a characteristic of God in the book of the Revelation. I don't want to go into that today because I don't have the reference here to go over that with you. But it's representing of his subjection to God. Now his belly, or where rivers of living water comes from, is under the feet or control of God. His belly is as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. Now sapphires representation of the under God's throne. God's throne is represented in the book of the Revelation is to look like a sapphire. And the belly is where the living water comes from. So it's talking about the living water or life is coming from under the control of the throne of God. Revelation 22, there proceedeth a river of water, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God. Also showing the deep, tender compassion towards his people. Now, ivory was very precious and expensive, and only a few could carve ivory. So the water that's coming out of his belly, the living water, the life-giving force coming out from inside of him is very precious. It's very expensive. There's only certain people that could carve ivory back in the day. It's talking about the intentionality of God. His legs are as pillars of marble, set upon sockets of fine gold. His countenance is Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. So marble is permanent in building. His legs, or operation / administration, is divine, the gold, and very strong. So his legs are his operation, the way in which he does things is gold. It's divinely inspired, but it's set upon it's pillars of marble. It's strong and permanent. And it's divinely inspired. Now his countenance or his emotion is fragrant, is also beautiful and sturdy. That's talking about the Lebanon. Also referring to the fact that he feels like we do, excellent as the cedars. Not only is the Lebanon trees sturdy and they're not moving, but it's also referring to his human aspect that he feels like we do. His mouth is most sweet, yea, he is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. His mouth, or his intimacy, is most sweet, dwelling under the secret place of the Most High. Is most sweet. He's altogether lovely. He is beautiful. And everything that I see about him, he is beautiful. And this is the one that I love. This is the one that I follow. That's the answer to the question where they say, what is your beloved more than another beloved, O thou fairest among women? What is your beloved more than another beloved that thou so dost charge us? And at the end, in verse 16, she says, he is altogether lovely. And everything that I see about him, he is most beautiful. This is the one that I follow. This is the one that I love. This is the reason in which I'm not offended. It's because of this man. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 1-minute break, and then we're going to come back and do chapter 6. So you have 1 minute. And we're back. Let's go in to chapter 6. We're going to be in the chapter 6 of Song of Solomon. We're on page 30. So please make sure you got your curriculum ready and let's get started. Whither is thy beloved gone, O thou fairest among women? Whither is thy beloved turned aside that we may seek him with thee? So this is the daughters of Jerusalem crying out again. So the daughters of the bride says, I'm not offended. Daughters of Jerusalem say, who is this man? She goes 10 to 16, explains who is the man Christ Jesus. And then in 6:1, the daughters of Jerusalem cry back out again and say, where is this person gone that we may seek him with thee? Now, we see the daughters of Jerusalem now asking the question the bride asked in chapter 1. If you remember in chapter 1, she said, where do you feed your kids? So they're asking the same question that she asked the bridegroom. We asked Jesus in chapter 1, where am I fed? And now the daughters are asking her the question. So now we see a transition from her receiving where to be fed from the Lord, and now other people are asking her because now she's becoming a leader. They see her affection for the king and now want to partake in the relationship, but they still have not fully committed by only saying thy beloved. We see the bride's life causes change in others because her love for the king. That the way in which you love Jesus will cause others to change their life. But I want you to see this. Listen, whither is thy beloved gone? Now, that's important because they have still not said my beloved. Now that's important because what I want you to notice, and we're gonna talk about this at the very end, that you have to be in a place where you want to receive him. That it becomes possessive. You say my beloved. When you're still saying your beloved, it's like I want more and I want to follow you and I want to know more about this man, but they're not fully committed yet. But listen to this. My beloved has gone down into his garden to the bed of spices to feed in the gardens and to gather lilies. Now she makes a couple declarative statements, 3 declarative statements that Jesus made to her in chapter 1. Man, I hope you love this, because when I read the Song of Solomon the very first time, and the second time, the third time, all the way to probably the 20th time, I never understood these passages. But when you understand what I'm about to tell you, this is powerful. The bride now answers in the way that she was told from chapter 1. The same thing he told her in chapter 1 is what she tells the daughters in chapter 6. That Jesus is in his garden or he's in his church. The bed of spices refers to the different giftings in the body, and the garden refers to the different churches. That you find Jesus in his church among the people doing work, under the authority of the houses, the local church. Gathering lilies is important to see. Jesus is gathering or bringing together the pure in heart, the lilies. That the same thing he told her in chapter 1, that you need to be walking out your purpose in community under authority, is the same thing that she tells the daughters, that he's in the community when they're doing the work, and he is in this place where people are under authority. And I want you to know that he's gathering the pure in heart, that the pure in heart will see God. That you have to get to, like, the daughters cry out, thy beloved, and then she replies back, Jesus is coming for them that are pure. Them that want him will find him. And then listen to this statement. I am my beloved's, my beloved is mine. He feedeth among the lilies. Now this is a part of the progressions, and we're going to go through this more fully next week. But I want you to see that you see a shift in her point of view of love. That before she said, before she said, my beloved is mine, I am my beloved's, he feedeth among the lilies. That's in chapter 1 or chapter 2. I can't remember off the top of my head. But this is a part of the progression. Now it switches. Instead of my beloved is mine, I am my beloved's, she said, I am my beloved's, my beloved is mine. So you see a shift where instead of it's I receive and then I give, it's I give and then I receive. So you see an important shift in her view of love. It went from the reception of giving It went from reception, then giving, or not, which means you condition out whether you give based on what you receive, to that she first is to give. I am my beloved's, then he is mine. Jesus has also changed where he feeds us. It is always in a place of purity. The pure in heart will see God. That's Matthew 5:8. Now, I want you to see two things with that statement that she says. Now, this is still not in a place of full maturity. And you're going to see this in a minute when we get to the final part of this progression, which we're going to end up seeing in chapter 7. But I want you to see something right here, that she still sees him feeding only in a place of purity. Now, there's nothing wrong with being in a place of purity and being fed by the Lord, because she even tells the daughters in verse 2 that he gathers lilies. He gathers them that are pure in heart. But you get to a place where you no longer condition your relationship. So she's not fully there yet, because she still conditions out how she receives love from God based on her purity. And you're going to see in a minute that you get to a place where you no longer condition out when and how God loves you. And when that becomes a condition, you're still not fully in a place of maturity yet. But let's keep going. Thou art beautiful, O my love, as Tirzah, comely as Jerusalem, terrible as an army with banners. Now, the word Tirzah means delightsomeness. Delightsomeness. That's a long word. Favorable or pleasantness. Now, beautiful as Jerusalem, or God's chosen city. Now, armies come back from a victory with banners. We talked about that a minute ago. Now, Tirzah is also the natural beauty, whereas Jerusalem is the spiritual beauty. So when he cries out to her, you are beautiful, he says you're beautiful both in the natural and as the spiritual. You have this banner of victory of your life. That's Jehovah Nissi. That's Jesus. That he says you're both beautiful naturally and spiritually. And your life is a representation of the victory in which Jesus won for you. Turn away thine eyes from me, for they have overcame me. Thine hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Gilead. Now to rage, to be fierce, to press greatly, to be urgent upon, is what overcome means. Jesus' heart is moved the greatest when we are solely dedicated to him. Our eyes are the doves, the single-mindedness and loyalty. It causes fierce love towards him that is very pleasing. Turn away also means to surround, a beckoning call of more of our love for him or to him. Hair represents the dedication to God and gladness of being fed in his flock. And when it says his hair is as a flock of goats that appear from Gilead, it's talking about the place in which we are well fed from him. When he says, turn away thine eyes, for they have overcome me, it's this declaration of how moved his heart is for us. And it's not saying to turn away, meaning to stop. It's actually a beckoning call of giving more. Just to pour deeper. This is powerful, that what he sees about her and what he's calling out to her because of how she lives. She doesn't get offended. She pushes forward. She beckons others to go into this. So she's walking fully dedicated to the Lord, even in the midst of great persecution. And she's bringing others into the process. And God says, I want more of the fierceness of that love. I want more of what you're doing. That's powerful. If you could ever understand how much God desires you and how much he loves when you love him. Thy teeth are as a flock of sheep which goeth up from the washing, whereof everyone beareth twins, there is none barren among them. We talked about some of these descriptions last week, but we're going to go through it again anyway. You carry your life in the teeth. Now, teeth represent the life that is shorn, cut down, pruned by the Lord, and they are washed clean. Bearing twins was used in the temple making, combining of two pieces of wood coupled together for the corners, giving strength and stability, joining yourself to the Lord. So when it talks about her life is shorn or it's pruned, it's been made clean by the Lord. And it's coupled together or enjoined with the Lord. The way you couple is you take one piece, it's not side by side, it's overlaid and it's coupled with metal. That's how the temple was built. And this coupled is so strong and sturdy, it's what provides stability to the corner or the cornerstone. The way in which you have stability in your life is when you are enjoined to the Lord. So your life is pruned and washed clean by the Lord, and it's enjoined with the Lord. Isn't it great when you understand what these things mean? It changes your whole life. It really gives understanding to God's, like, what does God see when he sees your life? A piece of pomegranate are thy temples within thy locks. Now temples or countenance was beautiful. Now pomegranate represents the sweetness and the red color of them. The representation of blushing that is also within thy locks, humility. So in thy locks is talking about the hair that covers the face. So when it says in thy locks, it's talking about the humility of being covered. But the pomegranate is the sweetness and the redness. It's talking about blushing. Have you ever seen somebody blush? It's that desire and that humility, and this is how you see me, and it causes deep emotion in me. It causes me to blush and be overcome with love for you. That's her response to what's being said about her. It's the same thing about our response when we hear that that's what God says about us. There are 70 queens and 80 concubines and virgins without number. We see the bride has a greater degree of position than any other group in the king's kingdom. When we talk about there's many queens and many concubines and so many virgins, but you stand out to God above all others. The way the Shulamite stood out to Solomon above all others because of her life, her dedication to the Lord. It's greater than all the others. Now, we don't say any of this to say, oh, you're over somebody else. That's not the point of this understanding. The point of this understanding is to see how greatly God sees you above. And it's not about being above others. It's just seeing that he desires it. It matters. It stands out to him above other things. My dove, my undefiled, is but one. She is the only one of her mother. Yea, she is the choice one of her that bare her. The daughters saw her and blessed her. Yea, the queens and the concubines, and they praised her. Give me just a second, church. And they praised her. So my dove and undefiled refers to the single-mindedness and loyalty to Jesus alone. This refers to the single-mindedness and loyalty to Jesus alone. So he's saying, or he's talking about the fact that she's single and loyal to him, and not single as in not married, but the singleness of my heart is solely dedicated to you. Only one of her mother, talking about the church, and the choice one refers to her maturity as a believer. She's a choice one, the maturity that she has. All the immature believers, the daughters, queens, concubines, the angelic host, praised the bride for her maturity she has. The daughters saw her, talking about the other believers, and the queens and concubines, that's a representation of the angelic host. All of these people praise her because they see the maturity she has with the Lord. The bridegroom is speaking of his mature bride. There is none like her. When the bride gets to a place of full maturity, and we're talking about corporately as an entire body of Christ and individually, there's nothing like her. There will never be anything like you when you step into a place of maturity with the Lord. And that's the greatest thing you could hear, is that not only that the Lord desires it, but there will be nothing like you when you walk in a place of maturity with the Lord. Who is she that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners? Now we have another voice that speaks in chapter 6, verse 10, and the blue is only a couple times in the entire Song of Solomon. And it doesn't seem to be the daughters of Jerusalem or the watchmen, so it seems to be a fourth voice, and this is where we believe this is the Holy Spirit speaking. But the morning was the position that Lucifer held in heaven. Fourth is the morning. You could attribute this to her praise and worship to God, who looketh forth as the morning. This is talking about you hold the position that Lucifer used to hold. He used to be the worship leader of heaven, the archangel of worship, and you have that place. Now the moon is a representation of her light in the darkness. It's talking about her evangelism. And clear as the sun refers to the purity of the brightness of God, the position that God holds in heaven to light the entire world. The armies of banners refers to the victory she will be carrying. I went down into the garden of nuts to see the fruits of the valley and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. Now the bride goes down into the garden where she has told the daughters of Jerusalem that Jesus would be. Now she's going to the garden where she said he would be. She is making a step to go down into the work of God, looking for fruits as Jesus would, and looking at both the vine, it's the church corporately, and the pomegranates, the individuals of the church are producing. She's going down to see. And I want you to see, it says the garden. Just hold on to that, because you're going to see another transition where it no longer becomes her garden, but our garden. So she's going to do work. And that's important. She's making these steps. Or ever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Aminadab. Now, Aminadab also means noble people. Before she could think, her soul within her drove her as fast as a chariot into serving the people she was going down to check on. The level of maturity is very high here. It's that, but without considering, or without think, and I say considering, you need to understand that it was already considered. When she got to a place where his hair was due and his locks were wet, and she entered into the Garden of Gethsemane reality of surrendering her will, is at the same moment she makes the choice. So later on, in a place of maturity, when she goes in and it's immediate, it's without thought, it's because the choice was already made. This is where you see real maturity in a believer's life, where there's no option to not serve. And service comes automatically because of the decisions you've already made before. And they're as fast as Aminadab. You will be drove to service of other people because of the choices you've made to walk with God. This is very high maturity right here. Now listen to this. Return, O Shulamite. Return, that we may look upon thee. What will you see in the Shulamite, as it were a company of two armies? Now, you have two different speakers speaking here. The daughters of Jerusalem speak, that we may look upon thee. And then you have the watchmen speak, what will you see in the Shulamite? So you have two different speakers in this one verse. Now this is a powerful final verse in chapter 6, revealing the two responses to someone who is completely dedicated to God. There is going to be two responses to your life when you are solely dedicated to the Lord. Now you will either be called back to help and do work, the daughters of Jerusalem, or you will be mocked and persecuted, the watchmen. The two companies opposing each other over the bride. So you hear one group, return, come back to us, that we may look upon thee, that we may be blessed by thee. And then the other group saying, what will you see in the Shulamite? What do you see in them? And this is, as it were, a company of two armies. This is where you see the responses come forth. when you race to serve and you have solely dedicated your life to God, you will see one group that beckons you to stay and to bless and to do the work with them. And you'll see another group that says, what is them? What are they? Church, I've received both of these in my personal life, where I've received criticism from other ministries and other pastors that, what is that? They want to criticize. But then we also see the other part where we have the crowd saying, stay, don't leave, don't move, don't stop, come to us. We have many invitations to go to many different countries. We hadn't really got any invitations to go anywhere in the continental United States to preach, but outside the United States, they're beckoning us to come. Brazil, Argentina, the Philippines, the India, these people want us to bring forth the message we're preaching to you. So we've seen both of these responses. When you become solely dedicated to God, there are people that will beg you to come and preach and stay and deliver the word. And then you'll also have another group that'll mock and persecute you. I will always recommend this. Go where you are praised, not where you're put up with. If they don't want it, they don't want it. Go to the place where people want you to give them the word. I minister to the people that want to be ministered to. These classes are, the curriculums aren't free. You have to pay for them. So you have to make a choice to dedicate yourself to do these things, to stay in the classes, to do the work, to receive from the Lord. And I tell people, I want to minister to the people that want to be ministered to. I want to grow the people that want to grow in the Lord. If you don't, that's okay. Don't take them. Don't follow. But you can reject the knowledge all you want. But if you really want to grow with the Lord, just get in the classes and receive, because they'll change your life. And obviously, that you're in our advanced class. But I want you to know that these responses are coming. And then when you get solely dedicated to the Lord in the place of maturity, you're going to have people that love you and want you to keep going and to minister to them. And then you're going to have another group of people that are going to mock you and not want you and reject you. Listen, go where the people beckon you. And you'll be blessed if you do that. And don't let the other one bother you, because I always tell people, if you know what's coming, you can be prepared to not be offended. If you know that people are going to reject it, when it happens, don't let it bother you. Don't be offended. Just keep on going, because you knew it was coming. It's only when you don't know if things are coming that you get wrapped up in the snare and the trap of the enemy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take another minute break, and then we are going to jump into chapter 7. Chapter 7 has only 13 verses also, so we'll keep going through it. We're going to go into chapter 7, and we're going to go into chapter 8, and we're going to try to finish before. We'll probably go over 2 hours again. Just so much to try to talk about. But we're going to take just a minute break, and then we are going to go into chapter 7. And we're back. So let's jump right in to chapter 7. So how beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O prince's daughter. The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of thy hands, a cunning workman. Now, this is where you receive vindication. And I love this. Let's talk about this. we first see the description of her feet and how beautiful her evangelism is, but we also see her called the prince's daughter, referring to her now royalty. How beautiful are your feet within thy shoes, talking about the way in which you've brought forth this message to us. Now, these are orange, yellow, whatever color you want to call this. And we learned in chapter 6, verse 13, the daughters cry out, the watchmen cry out. And now this is the daughters of Jerusalem, talking about the way she's brought forth the message to them and the royalty which she has that they see in her. She is being vindicated by the daughters of Jerusalem. Church, I love this. And if there is any hope that I can give you, and not that you care what anybody thinks, because if you sought to please men, you would not be a servant of God. But I can assure you, if you give the message to the people that want to receive, they will vindicate you in the sight of men. You will receive vindication of the Lord. And I love this because the daughters of Jerusalem at this point vindicate her in the sight of the watchmen. They are declaring her to them. I mean, this is powerful. Not that we ever seek to be recognized, but when she is vindicated by the daughters, it vindicates the Lord, is what it does. It vindicates her because of what she's done, but it also shows forth God to others. That's the part that I enjoy the most about this. Now, Jesus' legs were pillars of marble, or strong and permanent. Hers are referred to as thighs, or the definition of her muscles, showing the strength of her walk with God. So Jesus, we talked about the legs, pillars of marble, sockets of fine gold. Hers are referred to as her thighs because that's where you see the strength of her legs or her works. It also takes a cunning workman to make this walk so strong. This is showing her walk with God, being thus chastened by the Lord, the way in which the Lord carved out her walk with him. So this is so important when we look at some of these things, that when the daughters of Jerusalem are vindicating her, or they're declaring what they see about her that causes them to want to follow her, one of the things they bring up is her life, because they see her life as being carved out by the Lord, the work of the hands of a cunning workman, that your life is beautiful, that your life is precious, that your life is shown radiant of God, but it's been carved, or it's been chastened of the Lord. That the daughters, even the immature believers, see what you've been through and see how you're unwilling to quit. Thy navel is like a round goblet which wanteth not liquor. Thy belly is like a heap of wheat set about with lilies. Now the navel, or the belly button, where the umbilical cord was, refers to the nutrition of the word, that she does not desire anything else mixed with it. Thy navel is as a round goblet which wanteth not liquor. Now, that's important because she's talking about the place in which she is nourished. She doesn't want it contaminated with anything else. It wanteth not liquor. It doesn't need any outside intoxicant. Her life is filled with the glory and the blessing of God. She doesn't need anything else. Out of the belly shall flow rivers of living water, John 7:38. Thy belly is like a heap of wheat set about with lilies. Wheat is also used in making cakes, the raisin cakes from chapter 2, verse 5, which is the representation. Raisin cakes are used in sacrificial burial offerings too. Raisin cakes are talking about the sacrifice of, or the lifestyle that's lived sacrificially. Her life is founded on sacrificial living, or dying to self, and is all pure. Talking about the lilies. Could also refer to her being pregnant or full of the word in all purity. So you got both understandings. The heap of wheat is talking about the way in which her life, out of the belly living waters, the living water of life that she lives is all about dying to self, sacrificial living in a place of purity. Or it could also refer to the fact that she is pregnant on the word The word is being grown inside of her. She's full of the word. Like two breasts are like two young roes that are twins. And this is awesome that she's being vindicated. Like when Jesus says this about her, that's one thing. You know, when you know that God sees you this way, that's powerful. That gives you the ability to overcome. But then when other people recognize this about your life, that's vindication. You know, and vindication is powerful because it's not the fact that I receive something of you and, you know, look at my life. It's when I receive vindication, it shows that what I stood for on the word is true, and others now see that. Because if Jesus said it about me and now you say it about me, it's not just that God saw it, but you see it, and that changes you. That makes others want to follow and receive also. Her breast, or the life-giving force, is nurture is young and has plenty of ability to feed. Thy neck is as a tower of ivory. Thy eyes like the fishpools of Heshbon by the gates of Bath Ribbon. Thy nose is as a tower of Lebanon, which looketh toward Damascus. Now her neck, or her will, is like ivory, very rare and expensive. Also shown in the belly of Jesus that come out from the willingness to submit. Her eyes are clear water, Heshbon, showing the clarity of her sight toward following God, and what is on the inside of her, if your eye be single. Her nose, or her face, and anger is toward Damascus, or the enemy. She is always watching and prepared for battle. The nose that is up is talking about the anger, where she's always looking. She's always looking toward Damascus. She's always prepared for war. She's always going head first against the enemy. It was only when David took his eyes off the battlefield that he fell. You know, it's always when you're looking forward at doing the will of God and into the battle and setting people free that you overcome. Thine head upon thee is like Carmel, and the hair of thine head like purple. The king is held in the galleries. Her leadership is like Carmel, or the place in which you submit to God in great pressure, and he shows up. This is talking about Elijah and the prophets of Baal when he calls down fire in 1 Kings 18. That this is the place in which you submit to God. Your head, or her leadership, is under God, knowing that God will back her. Now her hair, the Nazarite dedication to God, is purple. It represents loyalty. Not only dedicated to God, but it's in a place of royalty. Now the king is held captive, or is captivated by her willingness, dedication, submission, royalty, and dependence on him. That when you get to this place, not only is God looking at you and calling these things out about you, the daughters call it out about you. You receive vindication from men in the sight of men. But this holds him captive. And that's powerful, that you can hold the king held captive in the galleries, that what he sees is just so captivating in your life. It's your willingness, your dedication, your submission, the royalty you have, and the dependence you have on him. It's the fact that he just looks at you and it just can't take his eyes off of you. That's how much he cares about you. That's what he sees in you. And then he cries out, "Oh, how fair and how pleasant art thou, O love for delights." Now you see the bridegroom cry out again. Now we see Jesus vindicating the bride. Jesus is captivated and pleased with us. That not only do you receive vindication from the daughters, now you're receiving vindication from the bridegroom. Because she's overcome one of the greatest seasons of testing in chapter 5, chapter 6. Chapter 5, really, into chapter 6. Where she doesn't draw back an offense. She overcomes. You know, she gets through a season of testing. And because of that, the daughters vindicate her. And then the bridegroom, Jesus, vindicates her. How pleasant are you, O love for delights. Just how pleased is God with the fact that you overcame. This thy stature is like to a palm tree, and thy breast to clusters of grapes. Now her stature or maturity is like a palm tree. This is a sign of victory and conquest. and also the strength to withstand storms. Her ability to nurture is like clusters. They're full of life. So, palm trees were used in signs of victory and conquest. Palm trees, one of these things, they have the ability to withstand storms. That's why you see them in places like Florida and in the islands and different islands, because even in the midst of a hurricane, these palm trees will withstand. They'll still be standing afterwards. And her ability to nurture is like clusters. They're full of life. They're grapes, not raisins. Grapes, talking about the life in them. I said, I will go up to the palm tree. I will take hold of the boughs thereof. Now also thy breast shall be like clusters of the vine, and the smell of thy nose like apples. We see Jesus now say, because of this level of maturity, he is going to take hold of her. Her breast as clusters of the vine is now the first of three aspects that he tells her to move in. First, the nurturing that comes from the vine, Jesus, sharing what he gave her. Let her nose or face be refreshing for the people she encounters. Now, that's powerful. Let's keep going. And the roof of thy mouth is like the best wine for my beloved, that goeth down sweetly, causing the lips of those that are asleep to speak. Mouth refers to intimacy, and the roof is the place where taste buds are. Let her intimacy with Jesus be the best, and let it be that even the people who are passed on will testify of the goodness that she is possessing, the great cloud of witnesses. Three aspects of nurturing others, sharing the refreshment of the Holy Spirit, and not losing intimacy with him. That's three aspects of what Jesus is bringing her into. That you nurture others, you nurture other people, but you also share in the refreshment of the Holy Spirit, but you don't lose the intimacy with him in the process. Three things that you should do. And then chapter 7, verse 10. Chapter 7, verse 10 is one of the most powerful passages in the entire Song of Solomon, because this is where she's entering into a place of full maturity. Because she says, I am my beloved's, and his desire is towards me. Now, this is the third phrase. It went from him to her to him, in a final realization that I am my beloved's, and his desire is towards me. In the very first instance, she says, she goes, my beloved is mine, I am my beloved's, he feedeth among the lilies. And then she says, I am my beloved's, my beloved is mine, he feedeth among the lilies. The first phrase switches. And then the last one, she says, I am my beloved's, his desire is towards me. Now, the reason why this is important is because I give myself to you because you desire me. It's not, I am yours, you are mine, and it's only in a place founded among the lilies or in a place of purity. No, it's you desire me. And a deep desire of the Lord in your life, and an understanding and a revelation of this will teach you that even in a place where it's not a place of purity. This is powerful. You can only get to this place when you walk into maturity, to really understand what I'm saying right now. Because so many people condition out whether they receive love from God depending on their own action. How good they did this week is the depending factor on whether they receive from the Lord. And they condition out what they receive from God. But a person that walks in maturity knows that even if I fail, even if I ended up in a place of compromise, even if I made a mistake, that he desires me. And somebody that desires me will cause me to run to them, not from them when I make a mistake. We're going to talk about more of that next week. Come, my beloved, let us go forth into the field. Let us lodge in the villages. Now we see this transition where she says, let us. Because we remember in chapter 6, she said, I'm going to go down to the garden. But now she says, let us. Now this is 4 times. Let us go forth in the field. Let us lodge in the villages. And we're going to see in the next verse, let us get up early. Let us see. 4 times you see the phrase, let us, referring to the work that she's going to do moving forward, will be connected with him. She is now in a place of maturity that she does not want to go down without him. Now the field represents the harvest, or the new souls, and the villages are the out-of-the-way places that we need to take the gospel. Village is also a representation of the church at large that needs refreshment. Now we see the bride now taking charge to lead into the ministry. We see her walking into her call. When you receive the revelation that God desires you, that it no longer becomes about your works in receiving the love of God. When you receive everything, you give yourself to him because he desires you. When you get to that place, then you enter into the place where you say, let us. Everything I do moving forward is not only connected to him, it's done with him, and it is only done in connection with him. That everything I do, going and getting new souls, going in mission work and spreading the gospel and walking out my purpose will be done in connection with you and never separated from you. When you condition out the love of God to among the lilies, and it's only in a place of purity, that when you make a mistake and you're not in a place of purity, then you decide that you don't deserve or you don't receive the love of God. It will hinder your ability to walk out purpose because you'll draw back. Mike Bickle, I love IHOP, and I've listened to a lot of their sermons, and some of these phrases that they use are so simple. He said, if you feel clean, you live clean. If you feel dirty, you live dirty. If you feel like God conditions love to you, it will hinder your ability to walk out purpose. You'll stop when you don't feel love. And then you'll have to go back and try to figure out how to get it. And it becomes about you and your actions receiving love and not about the fact he desires you. There's plenty of people I know this is probably not the best example, but they love somebody even when that other person cheated on them. Even when they committed adultery, the person still loved them. They were still willing to reconcile the relationship. You say, how could that be? Didn't they commit such a great atrocity against you? Well, yeah, I mean, they did. But their love wasn't conditioned to them. I know that's not the best example, and I don't want to go into adultery today, but I do want to say that when God looks at you, even in a people that commit adultery to him, he still desires it. Even when you walk in immaturity or rebellion, or you draw back in fear or compromise, or you make a mistake, God desires you. And the place of maturity is understanding that I don't change what I do, and I don't change how I feel or what I walk out with God based on my own mistakes or my good doings. My works don't dictate God in my life. When you get to that place, you don't condition out God in your life. Let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine flourisheth, whether the tender grape appear, and the pomegranates bud forth. There will I give thee my loves. Now the vineyards are the harvest. She is on a mission to see the kingdom of God advanced. She wants him to go with her into the place where she see if the people are ready to receive. She is going to check on the different aspects of the ministry. She gives her love to Jesus in the way she follows his example and surrendering and doing the work of he that called her to. She goes, I want to give you my loves. The way in which I give you my heart and show you my love is by doing the work of the ministry in partnership with you. That's not saying you have to be in full-time ministry. Even sharing with your coworkers in the marketplace is doing the will of God for your life. And when you do that, that is how you give your love to God. Your love to God is shown forth by the way in which you live for God. The mandrakes give a smell, and at our gates are all manner of pleasant fruits, new and old, which I have laid up for thee, O my beloved. Now the mandrakes were used in fertility in ancient times. She is saying that there is fruit pleasant and fertile for picking. There are souls to be saved, that I laid up for thee. This is your inheritance. Remember, Jesus' inheritance is in his people. She is doing the work of the kingdom out of an overflow of love. That I am going to get the souls that are ready. and I'm going to get them to give them to you. My desire is to give you an inheritance. And that's because you are my beloved. Because I love you. Because everything she's received of him is now overflowing back to him. And it's no longer about her receiving from him, but about her giving to him. Same way with our lives. When you get to a place of maturity, it no longer becomes about what Jesus does for you, but about what you can do what you can do for others, for him, to give to him. And that's the greatest place of maturity. We're going to go into chapter 8 in just a minute, but we're going to take a 1-minute break, and we will be back to go into chapter 8. And we're back. So we're going to go into chapter 8. We're on page 36 of the curriculum. So let's get right in. Oh, that thou wert as my brother that sucked the breast of my mother, when I should find thee without. I would kiss thee, yea, I should not be despised. Now, we see the first comparison to a natural brother, one that is full, not a half sibling. You could express more emotion or affection in the ancient culture to immediate family members, even more than a fiance. She wants to pour out her affection publicly, but also understands the need for temperance. Do not want to hinder the gospel over our outward affection. Now, this is powerful, because when you understand what this is talking about, is that I want to give you my affection and my love, but I'm not going to do it to the point that it hinders the gospel from going forth. That in the spiritual interpretation, let me explain this as simple as I can. There are ways in which you openly demonstrate your love to God in public and in private. And sometimes there's certain things that need to be left at home. There's certain ways in which you express love to God that's just not appropriate in a public setting. I've seen many things, many church videos and things like that, and I'm not pointing out anybody specifically, but when I watched it, I was like, it's weird. It gets weird. The church gets weird. People in the church feel awkward. It's like that needs to stay at home. It's not that you can't express your love to God in that way, but it just, the way I've watched people that dance in church and things like that, and it's like, you need to keep that at home. Because what you're doing could hinder somebody from receiving from God, because they think, oh, that's just weird. And that's what it's talking about. She's like, I want to demonstrate my love to you as the most intimate way, but I understand the need for self-control. That's a place of maturity. You know, the greatest pastors and people that I know, it doesn't get weird. It gets powerful, but it's never weird. You know, it's only the people that are in a place of very immaturity in the relationship with the Lord where it gets weird. And it's never supposed to get weird. You know, you can express yourself however you want at home, but there's certain things you need to do at home and not in public. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let's move forward. I would lead thee and bring thee into my mother's house, who would instruct me. I would cause thee to drink of spiced wine and the juice of my pomegranate. Now, you got to remember, we're in chapter 8. We're in a place of full maturity at this point. Now, lead or bring thee or Jesus into the house. Lead and bring thee Jesus into the house, which shows the co-heir position to lead in a way that honors him. That we're leading the relationship, we're moving and doing the will of God and joint ownership with him. You know, it's doing it in a place that honors him. You know, when you see somebody that's sick, you don't have to have some divine encounter from God telling you to pray for them. You can go and lead. You can stick your hand out and God will stick his hand out with you. The house of the mother refers to close relationships in her life where she could give honor to him. You know, taking him in even into the most intimate relationships he has with her family, you know, and things of that nature. Now, the spiced wine and juice of the pomegranates were very expensive. They were used to give honor to the utmost honor to the guest. So she's saying, I want to take you into the most intimate relationships I have and give this love in front of everybody. Like I want everybody to know the honor in which you have in my life, even in the deepest and most intimate relationships of my life. His left hand should be under my head and his right hand should embrace me. Now we know that the left refers to riches and honor. The right hand refers to the length of days. The left also refers to the wrapped up hand, the hand that is behind her head that she can't see, talking about the things that God does behind the scenes that she doesn't necessarily see, while the right hand refers to the hand that's used in pledging faithfulness and promises. It's the hand that she does see. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that ye stir not up nor awake my love until ye please. Now the daughters of Jerusalem are the immature believers. She's saying, don't disrupt my love until it's ready to be moved. She is no longer startled like the 2 times of the phrase used before. You know, she doesn't say that as the roes of the hinds in the field. That part of the phrase is not mentioned. This is also a progression. As she grows into a place where it's not that my love is not startled. You could not do anything that causes me to back away from what I'm walking out with the Lord. But I'm just telling you, don't disrupt it. Don't get in the middle of my relationship with the Lord. You can't cause me to give up on it or for it not to be a part of my life. But I just don't want you getting involved or disrupting it. Who is this that cometh up from the wilderness, leaning upon her beloved? I raised thee up under the apple tree, where thy mother brought thee forth. There she brought thee forth that bare thee. Now the bridegroom speaks again. Now John the beloved was also leaning on Jesus at the end of John's gospel. This shows the dependence of her on him and also the love and affection she has for him. He is now describing where she has come from before saying where she is now. She was stirred up from the apple tree in chapter 2. Her mother or the church was the season of testing. Same word used for the spoil in chapter 2 with the foxes. But she is coming out of the place where she is fed victorious. So she's came out from the apple tree, out from the season of testing, and now she's leaning on her beloved. All of her dependence, all of her love, the place in which she has deep connection with the Lord. Is in after she has overcame the victory of the season of testing. Now, set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thy arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The coals thereof are coals of fire, which hath a most vehement flame. This is one of the most powerful statements in the Bible. Now, cruel means demanding. Jesus is talking about the deepness of love that becomes a seal on our heart and arm. One being the inside and the arm being the outside so others can see. Love is as demanding as death. No one can avoid it when it gets to this point. Jealousy to the point it demands that none other be beside it. It is as powerful as a flame that burns. This is one of the most powerful statements that he declares about her. That the love wherewith she has for him is demanding, and his love is demanding as the grave. That there is absolutely nothing that will come between this love that she has for him, both inside and outside. It's going to be seen by everybody. It's going to be a burning desire, and it's going to be one that cannot be avoided. And it's jealous. It's a jealous love. Nothing can stand beside it. This love that God has for us, that's in us and back through us to him, nothing can hinder it. Nothing can stand beside it. There is nothing other than it. That's a powerful statement right there. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If any man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would be utterly contemned. So many waters or sin or pressures, even to the point of floods, will not put out the flame of love. All the substance would be held as insignificant in comparison to the love that is worth everything. Saying that there is absolutely nothing that's going to stop this love. Nothing will burn this love out. This love is going to stand no matter what. And that's powerful. This is maturity. This is a full place of maturity. There is absolutely nothing that is going to stop this love. It will never go out. And not only is it never going to go out, as that everything is held as insignificant in comparison to this love. That I would give up everything of my house would be utterly content. There is nothing that can compare to the love of God in my life. That's maturity. Now, if you have a older curriculum, if you have a newer one, there is a correction already made. But if you have an older curriculum, this is red. This 8:8 should be black. So if your curriculum is red, it needs to be black. Make the correction. This is the bride speaking, not the bridegroom. She says, we have a little sister, and she hath no breast. What shall we do for our sister in the day when she shall be spoken for? That's a question that come forth. Now, we shows the indication that the bride is working with the bridegroom. She's working with him. What shall we do for? You know, this is us doing something for somebody else. It's our connection. We're working together. These are small details that we don't want to miss. That in a place of full maturity, everything we do is together. And she immediately goes into interceding for the new believers. Then in a place of full maturity where he says this love cannot be drowned out, she immediately goes into a place where she intercedes for other people, new believers. And the day shall be spoken for is her marriage, or the day she becomes a bride also. The day that you make a choice to no longer say your beloved, but my beloved. This is what we intercede for every believer that's not in the place where we're at when it comes to a place of maturity. That they will enter in to this. If she be a wall, we will build upon her a palace of silver. And if she be a door, we will enclose her with borders of cedar. Now, there's two different things that are spoken her. And I have done multiple teachings on this. I have a Sunday sermon called Door or Wall. Are you a door or are you a wall? I ask this question all the time. Now, wall and door could represent positions in the body of Christ. It could do that, but I don't see that. But I see this to be a dedication to the Lord, our heart position. Are we a wall that doesn't let anything in but him? Or are we a palace? If we're a door, if we're a wall, we earn a palace of silver. And thus earning the palace of silver, talking about redemption. When he is the only thing for us, then that's where we receive redemption. Silver is always a representation of redemption. If we're a door that open to the world, then we need to be enclosed or have strict human assistance the entire walk with God. Now this is powerful because this is the understanding. This is the two things that Jesus puts out there. If you're a wall, which means you're solely dedicated to the Lord, you're a garden enclosed, I'm going to build upon you a palace of silver. This is where you're going to receive redemption. All the great and glorious things of the Lord are going to come into your life when you become closed off to the world and only to the Lord. When you are a door, which means you're opening yourself up for people to come in and out, in and out, in and out, and you're letting the world come in, he says, I will enclose you. Now, the enclosure means that God will do forth discipline in your life. This is where discipline comes into play. You're going to need somebody to literally stop you from allowing other things to come into your life. And you can make this choice. Because the bride cries out, I am a wall, in my breasts like towers. Then was I in his eyes as one that found favor. So the bride declares herself to be a wall, and she is in full maturity. When she got to a place of maturity that she was not and was a wall not open to anyone but him, this is where she found favor. Now I want you to know that in chapter 4, is where he declares her to be the spouse. And that's when she got to a place where she said, I'll go. When I make a decision that I am yours, that's when I became a wall. That's what I want you to know about the bride. The bride says, I'm a wall, my breasts like towers. Now, the breast representation of the nurturing ability, that's talking about growing up. You're old enough to make the decision. She's saying there's people that have no breast. That means I'm talking about age. They're not old enough to understand the decision making. But when you get to a place where you can make the decision volitionally to follow the Lord, and you say, I am a wall, I am closed off from anything else, I am only solely dedicated to the Lord, that's where you find favor with the Lord. And that's what I want to tell you, that you can be a wall. When you make a decision to be solely to the Lord, that's where you find favor. That's where the shift went from 4 to 5, chapter 4 to chapter 5, is when she became a wall. When she made a decision to go all the way. That nothing else was coming into her life but him. When you close yourself off to the world and be solely dedicated to the Lord, this is where you find favor. Solomon had a vineyard about Haman. He let out the vineyard unto the keepers. Every one for the fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. Now we see an understanding of the end times here, and we're talking about eternal rewards. Solomon, or Jesus, has a vineyard or a place of ministry. This is your place of ministry, your talent, what God has called you to do, that he entrusts his church to keep or to work. There's certain things that God has entrusted you to do. And when it says everyone for the fruit thereof was to bring 1,000 pieces of silver, it's saying that God has ordained a place of ministry and a call for your life to walk out in that ministry. And in doing that, it is required of you to bring 1,000 pieces of silver. That God is expecting you to bring an inheritance to Jesus at the end times. This is talking about when you die and you go to be with the Lord, or the Lord comes back, either one, whatever happens, that you are supposed to hand him what you've labored for him. Now you do the labor with him, but you're trying to bring him an inheritance. Trying to bring him gold and silver, works that will remain unto the end. And listen to what she says. My vineyard, which is mine, is before me. Thou, O Solomon, must have 1,000, and those that kept the fruit thereof 200. The bride acknowledges her place of work, and she declares to Jesus, he will receive from her what he has entrusted her to do, and the workers are alongside her will receive also. She says, the thing that you have put in my life, the thing you have called me to do, I will walk out. And you will receive what you've entrusted me with. I will bring forth your inheritance to you. I will walk this out for you because I love you. And not only am I bringing it to you, the people that are alongside me will receive also. Thou that dwellest in the gardens, the companions hearken to thy voice, cause me to hear it. Jesus' final affirmation to the bride commends the fact that she didn't quit. And also a call for her to speak, because the maturity she has will draw others to listen and obey him also. And then the last verse. Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a roe or a young hart upon the mount of spices. The final cry is the Spirit and the bride say, come. Revelation 22:17. She is beckoning for the Lord to return swiftly as a roe or a young hart leaping upon the mountains in victory with the pleasant fragrance he has. That when he says, come with me to the mountains, and she sends him away, the last call is that the last call is the Spirit and the bride saying, come, calling him forth. Now, I want to overview for just a minute, and we're going to finish because I know the class is pretty long today already, and next week we have plenty of time when we go through the progressions to talk about this some more. But just remember, chapter 1 to 4 is your inheritance in Jesus. Chapter 5 to 8 is Jesus' inheritances in you. And in a place of full maturity, you realize that it's his desire for you It's his plan and purpose and call in your life that you close yourself off from the world. You receive the revelation of his love and realize that no matter what I do, God desires me, so I don't draw back from him. That I walk out my purpose and call because he needs to receive an inheritance, and I want to do this for him. That ends you at a place of full maturity in the Lord. That says, I won't quit. I'll go all the way because I know you desire me and I love you for it. So that is the last 4 chapters of the Song of Solomon. I pray this lesson has blessed you. Please make sure you have your homework done. All the answers, additional resources will be online. If you have questions, please send your questions in. And we are going to finish here for today. If you have any questions, just send them in. And next week we'll be on topic 5, and we'll go through the Song of Solomon progressions. Let me pray and bless you. Father, I thank you. Pray you bless everybody that has been in class today. God, let them be blessed and receive of you, God, as we have went through the last 4 chapters of the Song of Solomon. Grow us in maturity as we grow with you. Lord, we love you and we thank you in Jesus' mighty name. Amen and amen. Class, have a wonderful night. We will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Have a great day.